God add a blessing to this holy word.
Jeff, thank you so much for reading all these long passages. I appreciate it. Due to the pandemic, in the last 2 years, we were not able to go to Germany. Besides missing my family, I really miss certain aspects of life. One is to go to the pedestrian zone or the Fußgängerzone and look at the different stores and pause, especially in front of one store or several stores of the same kind. The bakery. Yes, I admit, I miss the bread. Looking in front of the windows outside, you see the wonderful displayed cases from sweet to savory, and of course, the breads. So I go in and ding dong, makes the little door. And mostly ladies with their aprons with a little decorative, with fluffles all around, greet me with a smile. And I just stand there and go, oh, that smell of fresh baked bread. And then, of course, the decisions to make. What kind of bread am I going to get? Because, as I mentioned earlier on with the children, I love my carbs, especially good bread, fresh baked bread, thick with butter on it. Now you know what I really, really like to eat. And we're not talking about health issues right now. We're just talking about bread. Bread. Remember the pandemic last year, when not only all we had to wear masks, but many of us baked bread, myself included. We posted beautiful pictures of bread on social media and shared recipes. What is it about bread? What is it that we all go, yum? Reminds us of home. Even real estate agents have the smell of fresh baked bread in their homes they want to sell. And during the pandemic, if you went to the stores, there were certain shelves which were empty. The flour shelf. About the bread. And bread is something which cultures all over the world have. Yesterday at the picnic, we had pita bread. And then the night before at the Clippers game, there were hot dogs, the buns, type kind of bread. And I'm thinking about the naan bread, or the tortillas, or the bagels, or the bacon, or the baguette, or whatever country you go in. And even for those who are gluten-free, you have the millet bread, they have the rye bread, you have the sourdough, you have the yeast, they have the baking powder, or even some tortillas without any rising agents. Bread. And Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And basically in 5 weeks, we're all talking about bread. And I hope it doesn't get stale at the end of it. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the little boy, or we assume it was a boy, sharing his lunch and feeding 5,000 people. Last week, you shared the holy bread with us during communion. And today, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And we will talk about John chapter 6 for 2 more weeks. By the end of it, I hope you all know everything there is to know about bread. I am the bread of life. This is what Jesus said earlier on. And do you know that this is the first one out of 6 sayings in which Jesus says, I am. Starting out with bread, because we all need bread. And then Jesus says, I am the vine. I am the shepherd. I am the light. I am the door. I am the way. All familiar items, not only way then, but also now as well. Jesus does not say, I am the eschatological manifestation of the ground of our being, the kerygma, which we find the ultimate being of our interpersonal relationships And you all go, huh? No, this is not what Jesus says. I am the bread. I am not the cake, which you only eat for weddings and for birthdays. Even those of us who might reduce our carb intake, we all like bread. Because Jesus is for our everyday lives. Just as we prayed in the prayer just about 5 minutes ago. Do you remember what you prayed in the Lord's Prayer? Give us today our daily bread. Nothing about cookies, nothing about cake, nothing about waffle cones or anything else but bread. Because Jesus gives us everything we need and not anything we maybe want. Yes, we want many, many things. And Jesus in our story, which Jeff just read, is referring to the manna, Old Testament reading when the Israelites were in the desert and bread, pieces of bread literally came down from heaven. Just enough what you need for one day. No take-home boxes for tomorrow's lunch. No leftovers, just enough what you need. Because this is what God gives us, what we need and not necessarily what we want. And don't worry about it. That bread does not get stale and does not get moldy, even though, as the Israelites did in the manna story, they tried to keep it, and that's exactly what happened. That bread spoiled. But Jesus is the bread for our lives today and tomorrow and the day after. Just enough what we need. Essential. Essential what we need for every single day, no matter how often you eat it. And I love the image that Jesus is the bread. And I love especially, like yesterday at the picnic, eating bread together with others. And there's another piece of bread. And I'm not talking about the pumpkin bread or the banana bread at fellowship hour, whenever we are going to have it again. I'm talking about little tiny cubes of bread, broken from the big bread, once a week from this table. Mary Tucker bakes this bread once a month for us. And I love the fact that whenever we eat the bread from this table, we also eat the bread from her table, from her kitchen. She is sharing much more than just the ingredients of flour, yeast, and water on the recipe. I do not even know what recipe she shares, but she shares something from her home, from herself. And as we eat this bread shared with us, we not only share Jesus' bread, but also part of hers, and therefore be part of the community aspect. So the next time you see her, and I know she's on vacation, please say, thank you for baking this bread. I know she loves to do it, but I think she also would appreciate us knowing and us appreciating her. Jesus is the bread of life. John's gospel is the only one which does not depict a communion story. All the other three do. But nevertheless, in John's gospel, in this chapter, we have many, many references to a bread. In John itself, we have about 24 references of bread, and 21 of them in John's chapter number 6. So no wonder we paid so much attention to bread right now. In the Old Testament, in the Hebrew scripture, bread is mentioned about 300 times. Many, many more times, and not only because of the manna coming down, but it's one of the oldest traditions of baking with whatever grains you have available. And the word, which I find interesting, and now I'm a little nerd, I'm sharing that with you, so please bear with me for a minute. The word for bread is lechem, or lechem. Do you remember, and I know it's summer, we're not talking about winter, but do you remember the town Jesus was born in? Bethlehem, you got it. Lehem is in that word. Bethlehem actually means the house of bread, or the home where the food comes from. So now this is not only a trivia question for those, if you go to a dinner party, do you know what Bethlehem means? But the meaning behind it in the Hebrew scripture, bread is much more than the loaf which we break with butter on it, but it's also the food, what gives us sustenance, the nourishment. And so for war is the absence of livelihood, the absence of food. So Jesus was born in the house of bread. Jesus was born in the home of food. And he says, I am the bread of life. I am the food for life. I am the one giving you the sustenance because I'm coming from the home of food. Just something to think about, and for, as I say, your next trivia pursuit question, whenever that may come up. For me personally, not only because I'm hungry, yes, I did have my breakfast, but nevertheless, I'm always hungry if you put food in front of me. I can always eat fresh bread. But for me, the kind of bread which I'm really hungry for is more than just the slice, the sandwich, or the loaf. I am hungry for the bread, the tiny little cube, which we share once a month. Because a tiny little cube of bread, for me, gives much more of nourishment than a whole loaf. First of all, I don't get a stomachache. I don't have to worry about calories, but that's besides the point. What this little teeny piece of bread gives for me is not only nourishing, satisfying my physical hunger, but my spiritual hunger. Something which no bread, however good it might be from the best bakery, whatever, can ever satisfy. The longing and the hunger for belonging, for being called by name, for love, just what you were saying earlier on, Stu, no matter what the world thinks of us. Also to know that there is new life, forgiveness, community, and that I know this little tiny cube of bread, however big it might be, is all what I need. Yes, I want more. I could have it day after day after day after day. But all what I need is that little tiny cube. Because I need to be refreshed, not only in my body, but I need to be refreshed with my soul. There are many theories out of there. How many times are we supposed to eat that little tiny cube of bread? There's some traditions in which we eat it day after day after day, or Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. Some of us, coming from the background, only 3 or 4 times during the year. I love the fact that we eat it once a month. At the 8:30 service, we ate it every week, except of the first Sunday of the month. So, and depends on how hungry you are, what you need. But for me, once a month is just enough. Because by the end of the month, my tank is empty. I need to be refueled with the bread I cannot find in the store. I need to be refueled and I need to be refreshed by something else I cannot buy, no matter what is in it, if it is gluten-free or rye or with seeds or with sourdough or whatever else it might be. I need to be refreshed together with you. Because that little tiny cube of bread combines me to you. There's a unity on here which, however good and how many ever people might come to a picnic, does not really, really do it. And we have more about that little tiny cube of bread next week and the week after. So please stay tuned. And I'm glad that we can share it. And I'm especially glad that children are invited for this meal as well, excuse me, in our church. Because it's the grace, and it's the love, it's the forgiveness. And if you could see some of the children, sometimes their expression on their faces, and their eyes, and what's going on, then I'm sure you will also agree that, yes, it is the only right thing to do for those who are hungry to share that meal with all of us. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Eat and live. Because through eating, not only does our body live, but our soul lives as well. And sometimes we might not even know what we're hungry for. But as soon as we have it, we know it's exactly what I needed. Not necessarily what I wanted, but exactly what I needed for that day, holding me over miraculously for a whole month. And here's an invitation for all of you. If you ever would like to experience this meal outside of the scheduled 4 weeks, please let us know. We are more than happy. And I'm just saying that on behalf of Susan and myself, and we have deacons and we have Stephen ministers. We are more than happy to come to your home. Or if you would rather come here as well and to share that meal which brings life to us, to you. If you can't come to us, we come to you. Because Christ is not bound to this table. Christ comes wherever needed. For those going to college far away, please be assured Christ be with you, and to your parents as well. I know it will be a tough time to saying goodbye, but you are not alone. You are never alone. And for those of us who are staying here, let us be excited for the next time we can share that little tiny cube of bread. And yes, I do miss those bakeries with a little ding-dong as soon as you open the door. But I'm really glad that this is the kind of bread which gives me more than just the calories in my belly. That this is the kind of bread which gives me life. Wherever I am, wherever we are in community.